Coming up, a leaked memo reveals even more details into the ongoing attacks against unions. We have a guest from AFGE next. Activate Live starts now.
Activate your voice. Activa tu voz. Activate now.
Speak up. Speak out. Get involved. Get involved. Engage-toi.
Take action.
Aktiviere deine Stimme.
We're union and we're proud.
Welcome to Activate Live. I'm Tanya Hutchins, coming to you from Machinists Union headquarters in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. We'll get to federal attacks on public unions in just a moment, but first, Machinists Union members ratified a new 3-year contract with manufacturer Koppers Incorporated in North Little Rock, Arkansas last month. This is the negotiating team at Koppers. Members will receive yearly 3% wage increases, training pay, access to a machinist-approved benefit program, and classification upgrades. District W-2 members also ratified an agreement with contractor Delaware Resource Group, also known as DRG, and they had similar benefits. You can get more information on iMail. We continue to stand in solidarity with IAM Local 313 in Collinsville, Illinois. Members are on strike to protect their defined benefit pension plan. Now, District 9 in St. Louis held its annual Veterans Day brunch this past weekend. About 65 veterans attended the event, which has been going on since 2012. The keynote speaker was William White of Camp Hope, who lost his son overseas.
I received a title in June of 2006 that I didn't want, and that's the title of a Gold Star father. Me and my wife, and you have to excuse me at times, we lost our youngest son. We only had 2. Marine, and he got hit by an IED, and we lost 4 good Marines that day.
The IAM Veterans Department was also there. To see the full video about the brunch, visit our YouTube page this weekend or our website, goiam.org. Well, the American Federation of Government Employees, or AFGE, is writing a 5-part series about a top-secret memo from the White House about the president's plan to destroy unions. The 4th segment was just published this week. Joining us now to give us the details is Jackie Simon of AFGE. Thank you so much for being here, Jackie.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So how did this whole 5-part series come about?
Well, we got access through a publication, ProPublica, to this memo that had first been reported on by the New York Times, but it was written in 2017 by an old enemy of AFGE who went from the Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing think tank here in Washington. He is now the so-called labor liaison in the White House. And he put together, his name is James Shirk, and he put together this 19-page memo, which is a strategy, a list of the many, many ways that he was urging the Trump administration to go about destroying not only federal employee unions, but all private sector unions as well.
Now, when I first looked at that first article, there were a number of things, and I think we have some graphics that are showing what was in that memo. Can you tell us about what some of these things mean? Now, I know here it said that it would end collective bargaining, government unions, impede the efficiency of federal operations, and direct the government to put the interests of government employees first. What are they really saying here?
Well, we've seen them put this notion into action. The president issued some executive orders almost 2 years ago, and we challenged them in court, but an appeals court overturned the injunction on the implementation of those executive orders. And all the details of those executive orders are in this memo. And it does everything it can. Right now we still have a statutory right, a legal right to engage in collective bargaining. But they've made it so restrictive that it barely matters anymore. They've taken away duty time for representing employees for everything except actually negotiating the agreement. They've implemented 10-year agreements unilaterally. They aren't really agreements, we call them edicts. They take away union
What about the office space? Is
office
that another
space,
thing?
access to computer systems. They basically made it impossible to do any kind of on-site representation. The list goes on, but they have come to the table, demanded to bargain at almost every agency, and then they engage in what we think is surface bargaining, bargaining in bad faith, because they want to get as fast as they can to an impasses panel.
Now, the first article also referred, we had some other things that we wrote down on a graphic here about what was mentioned in this memo. And the first part that we mentioned was collective bargaining. But if we could put up on the screen the second half of what we had in this article, it was saying curtailing collective bargaining in government serves the public good. The Civil Service Reform Act allows the president to exempt agencies from its coverage on the basis of national security concerns. I couldn't believe that it just said that curtailing it would serve the public good when we're talking about government employees are part of the public.
Well, that's certainly true. The law that established the right of federal employees to engage in collective bargaining has a provision that would allow an administration to exclude any group of employees or individuals from a collective bargaining agreement if, for some legitimate reason, collective bargaining might be construed to be a national security risk. The last time we heard any of that kind of nonsense was from George W. Bush, who tried to take away collective bargaining rights in the entire Department of Defense, and when they created the Department of Homeland Security, the same thing. He famously or infamously said, union membership and patriotism can't go together.
That's ridiculous.
Given that the majority of our membership are veterans themselves, that didn't go over real well. And it certainly doesn't go over well with our members today. But yes, they're threatening to take away collective bargaining rights from DOD civilians, from law enforcement in the Department of Homeland Security, transportation security officers, the ones who went, along with everybody else, 35 days without pay just a year ago during the last government shutdown, and this is the thanks they get. Take away their collective bargaining rights altogether.
That is a shame. Now, we're going to put up a few more details on here that you highlighted in your first article, that the President of the United States should issue an executive order exempting, DOD from collective bargaining. 2 was explore the possibility of adding the VA to the list, which you mentioned about veterans, possibly parts of DHS, the State Department, OPM, and the TSA administrator should cease collective bargaining with security screeners. They're trying to get everybody, aren't they?
They're trying to get everybody, and they have. This isn't anymore, a threat or an idea or just a memo. A lot of this has been put into, has been implemented.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
As we speak right now, I'm about ready to go out to Denver to our, we represent a little over 250,000 employees of the Department of Veterans Affairs. An overwhelming majority of them are veterans themselves. And the way they're being treated by this administration it's truly shocking. Just when you think you can't be shocked anymore, they take more punitive action against these veterans, many of them disabled veterans. They pass legislation that makes it very, very easy to fire a veteran, any employee of the Department of Veterans Affairs, which was in this memo. Taking away, for example, what we call the Douglas factors, which is that you have to have progressive discipline. Now you can have somebody who's worked 25 years and never even been so much as late one day in their life, and you can fire them for being 10 minutes late once. Even if it's a disabled veteran, even if the reason for their tardiness has to do with an injury they suffered during their military service. I mean, it's outrageous, with almost no avenue of appeal to that firing.
Speaking of appeals, are they trying to prohibit these appeals, especially when it comes to sensitive jobs?
Well, with sensitive jobs, and that's is that a loophole that you can drive a truck through. But when they say that they haven't eliminated it altogether, that might be true. how on paper, but the reality is they've shortened the time periods to such a degree that it's effectively no avenue of appeal. And then they've basically written the rules that we don't have the right to strike. The only thing that we can do is take our complaints to these panels that are made up of political appointees, and we present our evidence. And basically what they've said is if management has any kind of plausible, tiny, teeny, itty bit of evidence, you have to go with management, no matter what.
Wow.
So it's an appeal right that's
not
just,
objective.
It's not objective, and it's also so hard to utilize that it might as well not be there.
What about when it comes to probation? Because I know, is the current probation period 1 year?
It's 1 year for most federal employees, yes, and they'd like to change it to 2 years. It's already 2 years for some employees for in the Department of Defense and Department of Veterans Affairs, but they'd like to take that government-wide.
And I know people in the private sector, their mouths are probably dropping open because some of them have 3 or 6 month probation periods.
That's
so
right.
For them to think about a year or 2 years probation.
Well, it's all part of an overall effort to try to make, to politicize the federal workforce. As we all know, President Trump wants this workforce to be loyal to him, not to the Constitution, in spite of the fact that federal employees take an oath to the Constitution. And during a probationary period, you're an at-will employee. Anybody can be fired for any reason, and it can be retaliation for whistleblowing. We all know how this administration feels about whistleblowers and the rights of whistleblowers to remain anonymous and be protected after they bring information forward. In many, many agencies, this has had the effect of making people, intimidating people, and knowing that they'll be fired if they ever tell the truth about the kind of waste, fraud, and mismanagement that some of these political appointees are engaging in.
What does this say about due process and what we think due process should be?
I mean, they've done everything they can, and they've laid out their strategy for eliminating due process. There's still due process. What they really, really want to go after. I mean, federal employees are lucky on paper anyway, as compared with private sector employees, because we have more than one avenue. We have some due process, and then we have our what really matters, our collective bargaining agreements, our grievance and arbitration process, which is really the best due process, and that's what they've come pretty close to taking away.
What do you think that union members should do? And even union members that are out there that may not even be in public unions, what can they do to help?
Well, they can certainly let their representatives in Congress, everybody out here except for people in DC and Puerto Rico has 2 senators and a representative. You can certainly let them know that you're aware of the actions of this administration with regard to federal employee rights, union rights, and that you would like them to support all legislation that's pending that would overturn these executive orders that puts this scary memo into effect. The machinist represents many federal employees, and I'm sure your strategy is pretty much the same as ours. We want to make it so that managers throughout the federal government wish for the good old days when they were able to resolve conflicts in a rational way through the grievance and arbitration procedures. Because when there's no rational process for resolving conflict, there's only one other possibility, and that's mass mobilization. They'll probably regret taking away the rational grievance process.
Now, you and I were talking before the show, and you were saying that now you have to really issue your grievances in person. How does that work?
Well, I think that the creativity of the locals is going to answer that question. I mean, in some cases, it will be assembling a bunch of people during lunch or any kind of break, in the supervisor's office and saying, "Okay, we can't write a grievance to you, but you're going to have to listen to us." I think that we have to be out in the streets. We've got to be active. We've got to make sure members of Congress find this, become educated about what's going on, and we're encouraging our members to bring their grievances to their members of Congress and say, "Okay, I would have handled this at the work site, but since I can't anymore, it's now yours."
part of this memo was mentioning working with Congress to make legislation to make it easier to fire workers. And I know we just had an election day, and people, you have your chance now to go out and make your voices heard. How important is it that we do fight back with legislation that is union friendly?
Well, for federal employees, nothing could be more important, but I would argue it's certainly important for all workers to have a legal framework to operate in that allows people who want a union to organize a union, to prohibit employers from engaging in the kind of dirty tricks that they do, to undermine people's efforts to organize a union, negotiate a contract, and enforce a contract.
What kind of feedback have you been hearing from your members, whether it's about the 5-part series or just about these issues in general?
I think that reading this memo and reading about the memo in our publications has opened some people's eyes. I think that sometimes the outrageousness and the radicalism of some of this stuff, when you talk about it to people, they think you may be exaggerating. Because it's so outrageous. And then when you see it in this format and you see how much of it they've executed, and they want to do a lot more to federal employees too. They want to take away our pay system and have a pay system based on favoritism and reallocate the payroll so that the bosses get all the money and the people we represent get a pay cut, take away our pensions, take away our health insurance and retirement. I mean, it runs the gamut. This is a scorched earth, destroy the living standards of federal workers, of really the entire American work. Believe me, only a small portion of this memo is about federal employees. They want to take away everything from private sector workers too. This is scorched earth, and they acknowledge, interestingly, that they think that a lot of union members voted for this administration, and they want to try to be very sneaky about it so that union members who had supported Trump in the past would never associate Trump with some of these things that might take away people's union rights in the private sector.
Well, speaking of some of those supporters, what do you say to the naysayers if they haven't read this? Because I feel like a lot of people who are speaking out saying, oh, this can't be that bad, haven't read this.
Yeah, they really need to take a look. You have to see it in black and white to believe it because it's shocking. Look, I've been working in Washington, D.C. for more than 30 years. The day I sat down here and read this thing, I was like, holy, this is, wow. This is the worst thing I've ever seen.
Well, we have worked together in the past. The National Federation of Federal Employees, IAM,
absolutely,
has worked together with AFGE in the past, and I know we will continue to do so.
We sure will.
I'm going to give you any parting words you want to give out to the workers out there, whether they're union or non-union, about this issue.
I would say, if you possibly can, read this memo. Don't ever take anything for granted, because every little aspect of your right to have a union and a union contract and organize a union is on the table with this administration to be destroyed. And you need to use your union contract, you need to treasure your union contract, you need to protect your union contract and your union rights, because it's really true. We have an administration that's out to destroy us, and they've got very specific plans to do so.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Jackie Simon from the American Federation of Federal Employees. We appreciate you taking the time out
Thank you
to be
for
here.
having me.
And I'll be totally honest, when she first got here, she thought this was not on video, so she did a great job. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we are going to move on and let you join the conversation. I know many of you have already done that. So let us know what you think. And I forgot to mention that the 5th installment has yet to come out. So if you go to the website, it's afge.org. That's afge.org. And you can read all of the articles there. There will be 5 altogether, and there are 4 that have already been published so far. But let us know what you think about the leaked memo at AFGE's 5-part series. You can comment now to activate your voice using live chat on YouTube. You can use comments on Facebook, or you can reply to this video on Twitter, and you can also comment during the replay. Well, here is a look now at this week in labor history. On November 6, 1922, an explosion at the Riley No. 1 mine in Spangler, Pennsylvania, killed 79 coal miners. The mine had been rated gaseous in 1918, but new operators reportedly insisted that it be rated non-gaseous, even though a fire boss was employed and workers had been burned by gas on at least 4 occasions. And our friends at Union Plus want us to remind you about potential savings available to our union members. This month only, the Union Plus wireless program has a limited time offer in which union members who switch from AT&T to another wireless carrier can earn $100 in credits per line. And that's in addition to the ongoing discounts that union members already receive. You can download the coupon from the website, unionplus.org, and you just click on that little yellow band there that you see in the middle. In terms of our special events that are coming up, Guide Dogs of America's fundraising events take place November 21st to the 23rd in Las Vegas with Hogs for Dogs motorcycle ride, a sporting clay shoot, there's a golf tournament, and of course there's the Woofstock charity banquet where you'll see all of the dogs dressed up and everyone else in tie-dye, so it should be a great time. Here are upcoming state council meetings. The Washington Machinist Council meets in Union November 14th to the 16th, and the California Conference of Machinists holds its winter meeting in Los Angeles December 12th. And don't forget to check the Wimpesinger Center website for upcoming classes in 2020. Here are the registration deadlines for news writing for communicators and basic web development. So December 6th, you have to get your application in for news writing. December 13th, get your application in for basic web development. And both of those classes take place in February. And for more information, you can visit wimpesinger.imaw.org. You'll be able to see the calendar and table of dates for leadership programs, staff programs, and departmental classes. Well, that's it for today. Support your union siblings. Share this video to your local or district page. And thanks to all of you who already do and for all of you who comment. See you next Wednesday on the same social media platform.